Welcome back, Michelle. Eager to dive into talking more about what's happening in the world, the current events, and how we can show up as our best selves. And I know you have a lot of tools in your toolbox that you help your clients with, and I'm sure you use as well. How you been? How you holding up?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. It's another day. It's a decision we make every day. As the chaos is happening around us, we're still at choice in how we're going to do today.
Yeah. And as we talked about last week, it's fortifying in us, building, helping us become stronger, helping us become more focused and on our purpose. It's like there's like not a lot of slack in the string, so to speak. It's making people tune up, isn't it?
Yeah, it's powerful when you want to do the work.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's the thing. And when it's in your face, you really have no other choice. We were talking briefly before we started the session here, just about how you can show up and how you can change your perspective and get a new outlook on not only your own life but the world itself. I think that's a great thing to dive into. So what's your sense? I mean, what if you have like two different perspectives, how do you shift from overwhelm or confused or fearful? Can it be done instantaneously, or does it require, 5 months of work? What's your experience?
Well, both those answers, that's a great question. And both those answers are correct. But first you have to unpack the pain. And that does take some work, and that takes some applying. You can't just fix these things overnight. But what I will share is that when you do the work and you apply it and you get the shift, when you learn to unpack your pain and your mess, I call it my mess. When I learned to unpack my pain and my perception of myself changed, when I got out of the pain or the victim or the internal conflict that I was in my life, then my perspective of the world changed. But I committed to do the work. And that work is, a commitment and consistency. But now, however, since I've done that work, and I'm still doing the work, but now it is so much, how do I say it? It's become habitual that work for me is easier than being, looking at as my perspective as a negative. Now, even with the world and the chaos, because I've done this work and I'm doing it, my perspective of what's going on, it's prepared me for what's going on right now. So now I can walk through life. That's why my business, Do Hard Things Well, because life is hard and circumstances change all the time. But our exterior circumstances doesn't have to have anything to do with our what's going on inside us. We don't have to allow it.
Right. What you just said makes me think of that statement. I forget exactly what it was, but it was something to the effect of, God gave you all the tools you need. You are prepared for this. Use them, right? Our focus and our what are you focusing on? Because I find that there's just as many good things going on as there in your life at any given time as there are bad things. But if you focus on the bad, it's just going to consume you, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And, there comes a time in life where we have to be able to, heal our trauma, because we all have some kind of trauma of our past.
Yeah.
And that shift is real. And when we decide, when that happens in our life, to unpack that, and the shift is real, and then we can focus, we can take that past and actually use it to be our purpose. And I think people get it. There's a big misconception of people that are not comfortable with their trauma, or they haven't healed from their trauma, of even talking about it. So then they don't really find their purpose, or they're not really playing full out on what they're called to do. Like, God gave us some gifts and he sees us whole, perfect, and complete, right? He's already seen the end. So for us to be vulnerable enough and to be, okay, I'm going to unpack this pain because I'm going to get to the other side of it.
Yeah, to dive in, which a lot of people have an aversion to do because it's scary to jump in there, isn't it?
It's very scary. But the example is this: like, if we were talking about my past, and maybe we'll go into some of my stories of how I've overcome, but if we were talking about my past, I can remember back in my pain and all the different traumas that I've experienced. I couldn't talk about them without crying or being, it's still affecting me. The difference is now, since I've made the shift, I can tell you, oh my gosh, I was this as a child, or I went through this, or my church hurt me here, and I went through these big things, or my divorce, or my illness, or facing death's door. I can talk about it and take from it now and go help somebody else. Now,
Yeah.
the old me, right? When we don't do the work, which I call, this mind management. When we don't mind manage, we can stay living in our mess. But when we mind manage and overcome, we can find our gift and our purpose, and the ripple effect can go change people's lives.
And that's what's awesome. See, and that's the power that we have, don't we? We get to choose whatever we want to focus on about our story and rewrite it and fix it and, change it.
Yeah. And that's the whole reconstruction, right? Reconstruction of our story, or, how we can reframe it.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I think it's so powerful. And one thing that I'm noticing is there's so much in the media for people that do watch the media. Some people, it's their thing, and that's fine if they want to watch that. But there's so much in there. I just think people have to be aware that that's affecting your vibration and your story and your perception of the world, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, and the minute, if we're constantly watching something, if it's not positive, right, we're taking that in. And everything we're taking in, and then if we're thinking about it, it's affecting our body and everything, and then it affects our outcomes.
Yeah, it's so powerful. So, I mean, what's your thoughts? I mean, did you just tell people one of the first thing to do is to cut out any negative external stimuli, or where do you start there?
Well, I never tell anybody to do anything. It's the first thing I do. I don't give advice. You know what I do? I ask a lot of questions and I stay curious, because you know what I ask people is, does that work for you? Yeah. Because if that's working for somebody, which we know it isn't, but some people haven't reached their end, or they need to answer that question themselves, right? Wow, that's why I'm here. This isn't working for me. Or, geez, this isn't working for me.
That's a great question. I got to think about it, because that's a great way to turn the person into themselves and let them ask that. And I feel the same way about certain things. If people ask me, what's your thoughts about this? What's your thoughts about talking about the current situation? And what I've started doing, because I know that they won't appreciate it, or they won't, unless they go searching themselves and find it, there's nothing, they won't appreciate it. They won't value it. Right. Yeah. So that question kind of seems like it is in alignment with that. It's like, is it working for you?
Yeah. Well,
people are asking questions.
Yeah. In true coaching, when you're coaching someone, real coaching, which I have found so empowering, it changed my life, was nobody ever told me what to do. When it was, what changed for me is when I came up with it myself. Yeah. It was sustainable.
With their assistance, is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Somebody came alongside me, right? My coach came alongside me and just started pulling out of me enough for me to go, wow, ding, 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 right? And all my past and my pain, instead of it working against me, it works for me now, because I found, does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of, but to elaborate on that a little bit from your experience.
Well, before I did this work and I was, looked at myself from a different perspective. I looked at myself from like this victim or an internal conflict, not good enough, these limited beliefs, all the things we learn, the tools we learn from all my traumas. But as you embrace your trauma and you unpack your pain and you get these tools, real people, real life, real stories, just some tools in the toolbox, right? And you get these tools and you overcome. Wow, all that I was playing small and hiding from, I'm not doing that anymore. I can take all of that, gather it, and now it works for me, because now look what it's done. I'm in my purpose, I'm in my calling, and I want to call everyone to get out and get into theirs, and I want to help them do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's because we need that to have that right now. And we talked about this in our last video. It's the time for everyone to get on the playing field and play in whatever way they are meant to play.
Yes, and everyone is uniquely made with their unique gift and part. And I call that wake up your greatness.
I love it. It almost seems like the Marvel movies. Is it Marvel, or when all the mutant people, they with their special skills, the X-Men type movies, when they all are out there fighting in their own way, using their own special skills, and then that's how they win. Yeah. And it's not. We're not going to get through this with some people sitting on the sidelines who have great skills to offer to the cause.
Right.
So what do you? what do you think you would say to someone who is like, oh, I'm really scared and afraid, and I don't want to speak up. I don't want to stand up, even though I have something to say. What would you say to them?
I would probably dig deeper, because I don't really believe that it's really about this right now moment that they're scared to say, speak up right now. It would be something else, but this timing might trigger finally for them to do the work so that they can speak up.
Okay.
Does that
something? Yeah, it does. So it's not as, it almost sounds like you're saying it's not as easy as just one thing. There's maybe a thing behind the thing or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then it always is. It always is. Because if we don't want to speak up right now because we're afraid, there's a reason why it's afraid. Maybe we spoke up before and there's something else about us, our inner critic, there's something going on. And how do we overcome that? So when life throws us at any season, we're ready to go. We're ready to go.
Yeah.
And that's what this kind of work does. I mean, I've spent more time, I'm ready to go in my life. I'm ready to go every day, even if I'm having a bad day.
Yeah, because you've done because I know you, and you've done those foundational practices and exercises consistently and built that confidence and that ability, right?
Yeah. And so that's my nature, right? That's what's natural for me. So the old me that was natural was play small, hide, not step out, and not good enough, or limited beliefs, or whatever it was, just being functional, not optimal. Now it's more like, no, let's go. Because I don't buy into the fear. I don't buy into the noise. I don't buy into the distraction. I know that where my gifts are and what I was made for. I want to help other people find them.
Yeah, and it's the time. It almost feels like that right now is when all of us are kind of thrown into the deep end of the pool, and it's like sink or swim. And what I'm seeing in myself and other people is that even if you never took a swimming lesson, you're still okay. Like most people are still,
they're okay.
And not even that, and even above that, maybe even able to thrive, or maybe even able to shed off, old programs or old ways of thinking and really shine. Yeah, which is it's exciting.
And for such a time as this, right? It's helping people see that they are alive and born today for such a time as this. And so to be fully alive and awake, right? A lot of people are not, because they're like, I'm too afraid.
You still think they're not ready, or they're not worthy. They bought into
or I'm not qualified. All of these things that we bought into somewhere. We picked up some lie.
Yeah, it's kind of like the other thing that I'm seeing is, a lot of us receive quote unquote downloads or inspired ideas or some kind of a message. And really, and I've heard this from a bunch of different people, all of us can receive those. But I think so often we diminish, as a general tendency, we've been conditioned to diminish our voice, and we put someone else up on a pedestal. And that's just not the time for that right now. It's everyone's needed in the game.
Everyone's needed, and everyone was born with a purpose. See, this is where we have to get to, even in the times that we're living in, that's helping people wake up or wonder or looking deeper, right? And thinking deeper about life, things, because of the way the world is. At the same time, even if we were living in a different era, we're all still called with a purpose and a unique gift.
Yeah.
And I think what gets bogged down is that, we're all raised a certain way. And even if you come from whatever you think a perfect family is, or a dysfunctional family, whatever that is, a lot of things we're taught who we are. Our parents teach us, our siblings teach us, our schools teach us, our environment teaches us, current events, newspapers, whatever it was, our church, whatever anyone was. And so one of the tools that I teach is for someone to actually write that down. What made you who you are, your environment, they talk about the whole thing. Now let's talk about who you really are, opposed to who you were taught you were.
Two different things, right?
Yeah. And then you start unpacking.
What do you do? What do you do when what's the first step you take when it's like, okay, who you really are, as opposed to who you've thought you were? Because we all know that type of thing can be errors in judgment, or, misinterpretations or things like that. What's the first step when you go, hey, are you ready to find out who you really are?
Yeah, those are all those questions, right? And what happens in the process of coaching, that's why it just doesn't happen in one session. It's like this beautiful process of reconstructing, right? Because you have to kind of first unpack it and then reconstruct it. And then what happens, people see it from a different perspective instead of buying into I'm not good enough because maybe somebody told me I wasn't. Does that make sense?
It does. And once they see it, like you said, in my own work, it's when I've seen it, is the powerful. Other people can say it, or I can read it in a book 20,000 times, but until I see it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh my gosh, it really hits you.
It hits you. And that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I call it, when we don't do this work, we've lived with toxic coping mechanisms. So we've picked up these ways we survive instead of thrive, right? But now what happens in life, everyone hits these crossroads or whatever you want to call it, where it's like they want to start doing this work. Something happens, they get sick, or because it comes out, our body just explodes one day, emotionally, physically, mentally, something spiritually, and then you start seeking, right? Well, when you're ready to do this work, I mean, it's so beautiful because you don't have to define yourself from those things.
Yeah. And
that's why I say, play small, or, I can't do that because I was abused as a child. So I'm going to play small because I'm not whole because I was molested as a child. Well, that's not true. It's true that those things happened to me, but the truth is it doesn't define me. It's not who I am. Yeah. But the beauty in what happened, I can overcome now and go help somebody else, that they still can be in their destiny. They can unlock their own.
That's the thing. That's the thing, that when we enter into these relationships with coaches or helpful people in that area, it's magic. It's straight up magic, because it's almost like a veil becomes lifted, and you become able to see clearly where you were a little bit off with your thinking, and it's like, oh my gosh, and then the healing kind of starts, and you move forward with a new empowerment.
Oh yeah. And you can you look at life so different. There were so many things in my life when I look through that I went through. I remember going through a real trauma of being hurt by a church and just felt like ostracized when I went through my divorce, and it was one of the most traumatic pains I've ever went through in my entire life. Like, wow, I just spent 5 years in this church. My kids grew up here. But now when I look back in the growth I've done, I mean, what a gift. Like, yeah, I don't act like that. I don't want to be involved in the way that all was.
Right.
But at the same time, for me, boy, my relationship and my spirituality and my faith, everything grew so deep. And I've overcome that. So it's just something else. And what happens when people get hurt, especially like in a church, if we just talk about that for a minute, this is just one trauma, right? You get hurt in a church, you lose your faith. You never go to church again. You're at home. It's cutting so deep. It's so wounding. These people knew everything about you. They prayed for you. They were in your life. I mean, I hear these stories, and now I'm like, I'm one of them. I want to help the next person that just got hurt by church.
Yeah, right. And you probably do attract people who have been hurt that way, because they somehow know you can help them.
Yes. Yeah.
Send out these vibes.
Yeah. And so and that's just one thing, right? How do we overcome and do hard things well? How do we take our functional life and make it optimal so that we're thriving instead of just, again, being that effects of what happens in our life? So I just, when you do the work, you don't really hold on to the traumas and the memories anymore. They've just now they're a part of your story, but they're reconstructed, they're different, they're reframed.
Right. It almost sounds like and again, speaking from my own experiences as well, it almost sounds like there's a little bit of a detachment from it, and there's not so much glue holding that into your being anymore, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. You're not, exactly. You're not connected to the trauma. You've released the trauma, but you still went through it, but it's released from you. Yeah. Right.
And it becomes part of your, then you have a better, like you said, a better toolkit to help other people go through that as well. We talked about this last time, walking the journey, and brings us to this point in time. But I think it's really fascinating that with so much craziness going on in the world right now, it almost seems like it's heightened. I'm sure, the world's always got something going on. I've been watching videos about people doing prophecies and getting, and then, there is this sense of, and some of the comments say, well, this person's been saying this for, 10 months or not, 2 years. but I guess we're always in that pivotal point of, hey, you get in the game and stand up for what you believe in and be part of the solution, or sit
Yes.
on the sidelines, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the times that we're in now, it's like, how do we want to do life? I mean, right now, there's no in between anymore. It's like left or right, you know what I mean? And I didn't even mean to mean left or right. I just mean like, get on what you just said, get on one side or the other, because there's definitely a divide, which is, it's a sad situation that we're in, but it's also calling us to the front lines, basically.
Yeah. And I foresee, one of the things that I've been thinking about for the last few weeks is that there is going to be a huge need for not only, for all types of healers or problem solvers, not only in the medical field, but in the psychology and coaching fields. I mean, because we've now, it's almost like we've ripped this wound open and it's like a collective wound in our consciousness. And there's going to be so much. I foresee a huge flowering of consciousness, but I also see a lot of healing that's going to need to be done, because people need to be walked through these. They need to be walked through this and assisted, almost like if you're waking up from an anesthesia, you don't want to be doing it by yourself. You want someone there with you. Yeah, that's what it feels like.
No, and I agree with you, because if they don't have the tools, because really mental illness, and they're proving it more and more, like the whole neuroscience and everything, it's our thoughts. Our mind is in control of our brain. So this depression and anxiety, they can't get rid of it. What they do is they medicate you so you don't feel it. How do you get rid of it? Mind management.
And you got to dive into it, which is people are averse to that, right? They don't want it. They don't want to face it. And on one level, I don't blame them, but you're right. Masking the symptoms will never heal it,
No. And it shows up. It'll show up. It keeps showing up. We're walking around with it. Even if we're stuffing it over here and hiding it, what it does is it keeps us from being in the present moment, because we always are stuffing and we're distracted. And we carry it with us. And until we get to a point where we're like, I'm done, I want to unload this backpack, it's too heavy. And people will, if they don't miss that they're being brought to it, because it comes out. So it's
forcing, and like I say, I just see such positive things coming from this. And and it's what people have wanted and asked for. It's kind of like the universe. We've all asked for change, and we've all asked for a better world. Yeah. But I think a lot of us, and I'm going to throw myself in the mix too, are guilty of, being a little bit averse to doing the major work. And finally, the universe says, well, I'm going to push you all off a cliff, and then you'll have to wake up.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Because we were meant to be, life is not going to be easy, right? We weren't promised this perfect life. Right. But we were born for a purpose, and we were meant, and I have my faith, so I believe in God, and that there'll be another lifetime. But I also believe that the Lord, he died and rose again to set the captive free. It wasn't just only to go home to heaven and have eternity, but it was to set the captive free while we're here alive on the number of days that we have, so that we don't have to walk in that pain, in that brokenness, or whatever happened to us. I don't really like to use the word brokenness, but the traumas or whatever happened to us, that we're carrying these bad memories of our past, or we didn't come from the right family, we don't have the right, whatever it is anyone's going through. The truth is, we can walk set free, and we can be present in the moment to help others and to live our life. And we help others by helping ourselves, by getting healed.
I love that you said that. And I think this is a great thing to bring up. And I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people sometimes think, well, how can I be a part of the solution? Or how can I get in the game and use my spiritual power and my voice to help bring in and usher in a new time? And I think that's great, because I often think about that, is that the way you heal the world is to heal yourself. Yes. It's the first step,
It's the first step.
And that takes a lot of pressure, because people think, oh, well, do I have to get up in front of people and speak, or do I have to do this? And you do whatever you want to do, but still, when you heal yourself, that's one more, mark on the side of the world's healing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
everyone's is different, right? Just, I love that you said that too, because it's not always about speaking or being the one in the front, you know,
Yeah.
or, I mean, because everyone has a different gifting. And what's beautiful is when you find yours and you stay in your lane. Like for me, I have found mine, but I don't have a lot. I just have what I have. So I know my limits now. I used to try to run out and be in all these other lanes.
Yeah.
I'm just not good at those lanes. And
Yeah.
I'm finally, it's okay. I've allowed myself permission, you know?
Well, and that's the thing. And even something as subtle as just focusing on things that make you happy and doing what makes you happy and
Yes.
focusing on positive aspects and making lists of appreciation. Those things they seem really simple, but they do send out ripple effects to all of us, and we feel that, and it goes into the bucket of positivity.
Yes. And it's huge, right? I remember once it was like when someone asked me, I wanted more fun in my life. And so when I was going through all my stuff and had all this pain and I was so depressed, I was just, I was just so, and I wanted more fun in my life. And when I realized that I get to just be more fun.
Yeah, with yourself, right?
Now I've entertained myself. I'm fun. I'm complete.
That's really, we really are this microcosm. Whatever, I've been really into this idea of, give yourself what you want from the world and entertain yourself and amuse yourself, because it starts with us. And then when we get that little, that little polarity within us of that experience, it radiates out, and other people are like, hey, and they probably did this to you. They probably said, hey, you seem fun. I want to hang out with you. We attract that once we create it ourselves.
Yeah, right. Well, you start learning too. Sometimes, I was just talking to someone the other day, as everyone's going through something different. And it breaks my heart when I hear people like, because I know what it's like to be so stuck and want out and not know what to do and full of shame or guilt. Like if I do anything, I'm like boxed in and I can't do anything. Well, and people are like that all over the place. And to be able to realize that they can get free of this stuff, and that years and decades are going by just stuck in that muck. And my heart is just like, ugh.
Yeah, and you have these great and effective tools for them, but you're right, the people have to come and ask for those tools, don't they?
Yeah, they do, because it has to be sustainable, right? They have to want it. You have to want to commit to this work, because this work it's hard. Like we talked about last week, this is the hardest work I believe anyone ever does. So and I'm so thankful. It's the best work ever, and now that I sit on the other side, it's like, and I'm still processing. We're always growing and changing, and I'm dedicated to constantly doing work. And as a coach, every day I'm getting new tools and studying my own tools because I'm walking it. It works.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. It is hard work to do this, introspection and constantly show up. Part of it is just showing up every day and saying, hey, I want to be better, because it does suck sometimes when you feel like nothing's moving and you're stuck, and then all of a sudden you have this major breakthrough and go forward. Yeah. It can be frustrating. It is frustrating, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, it's so worth it.
What are we here to do if not that,
Yeah. And even today, like in my life now, when I start to get doubt or fear creeps in, right? That's just for me. I always know there's more power in the faith than the proof sometimes, because sometimes we've done it, we've shown up, we've done everything, and we just have to trust and keep doing it.
I think that's a great sentiment to end on. Just keep showing up and keep trusting. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So remind people how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in you or your coaching services. And I'll also put the information down below. Okay.
Michelle Harris at unlockyourdestiny.com or Michelle Harris Coaching at gmail.com and 805-556-5844.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. I look forward to chatting with you next week, and we'll keep moving forward in these times that we're in.
Awesome, Mark. Everyone needs to take a risk and jump in.
Love it. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.